You are about to enter the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast on shockwaveskullsessions.com. And now your host, Bob Nalbandian.
Well, I'm back, and my voice is not quite 100%, but it definitely sounds better than the previous episode. This is Bob Nalbandian, and this is another episode of the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. This one runs a little over an hour, so I'll make this a short intro. And going back to the original Shockwave Skull Sessions theme of going through the band's catalog, and I love when we include a key member of the band, key musician, songwriter. We've done this with Bill Ward, going through the Black Sabbath catalog on an old Shockwave Skull Sessions episode, which we'll probably be reposting soon. We did it with Bob Daisley, going through the Rainbow catalog. And now we do it with the great Nazareth, with the one and only master guitarist, producer, songwriter, Manny Charlton. Of course, one of the founding members of Nazareth. Manny is living in Spain and still doing great. He's got a new band, and we talk a little bit about what he's doing these days as well after we go through the catalog. And we go up and through till about the Malice in Wonderland, and we start from the beginning. We didn't want to cover the 80s, so of course Monte Conner, the Shockwave Skull Sessions regular, who loves doing these catalog episodes, especially with someone like Manny Charlton. Of course, Monty, like myself, is a huge Nazareth fan. So this is a fun one. So once again, the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast, you can check it out at shockwaveskullsessions.com. We've also got a PayPal address under shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. You can send a generous donation, and as we've said, donations of $20 or more, you'll receive a Shockwave Skull Sessions care package. So be sure to include your address if you send a donation. And, of course, you can email us directly at shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com. You can also check us out and subscribe to us and review us on iTunes, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and a few others out there. I don't keep track, but I know my fake producer Matt does, so you can always hit him up as well. So without further ado, this is the great Nazareth catalog discussion with Manny Charlton and Monte Conner. We'll briefly cover the first two albums, the self-titled and Exercises, because Monty and I really got into the band from Razamanaz on. But we'll briefly discuss the first two. And then I was thinking we could just go up through like Malice in Wonderland. And then maybe if you want to touch on a couple other things and some solo projects afterwards, we could do that as well.
Up to Malice, we said all in the 70s, really.
Right. So actually the band formed in, 1968? Is that correct?
Yeah, it was about 1968 I joined them. It was a cover band, and working in a place in Dunfermline, our hometown, kind of a ballroom. We had a residency there. And they asked me to join them because their guitar player left, their original guitarist left to go to university. And so they asked me to join them, and I said, well, I'll join you, but, forget the cover stuff. We've got to do originals. We've got to try and do originals as well, So that's what we did. We still played covers, because we played some of the local bars and clubs in Scotland at that time. We still did all the Deep Purple and Cream and Zeppelin stuff,
Nazareth put out their first self-titled debut album in, 71. And the only song I'm really was familiar with was Morning Dew, because I remember seeing that on was it the Beat Club?
Yeah. You did. That was quite popular. We played that live. Like I said, we were a cover band, and we decided to cover it on the album. It was quite popular from the first album. The problem was that we didn't really know what we were doing in the studio at first, We wrote all these songs, we wrote country songs, and we wrote blues stuff and metal, and it was just a hodgepodge, really, And then we were playing live a lot. We were going out playing live with supporting Deep Purple and loads of other acts at that early. And the audience loved us. We weren't selling any records, So we've got to figure out how we can connect with the people that like us live, We did the first two albums. We used different producers, and they didn't really understand us. They were just in it for the money. You know what I mean?
One thing I was going to say about the first record is, like Bob said, I got into Nazareth with the Razmanaz record, so that's the Nazareth I knew. So I kind of went backwards and discovered the first two records later. And, there were certain songs on those records that I could relate to as a fan of Razmanaz, like Witch Doctor Woman was like, a crushing proto-metal anthem track, from what I recall. Yeah. There was some great stuff on those records, but to me it seemed like Razmanaz was a record where it all coalesced. And the band found its direction.
That's right. Like I said, we're going down great with the audience, and so when we come to do the third album, let's get a musician in. Let's get somebody that knows what we're trying to do as a live band, and try and nail that on record. And so we asked Roger Glover, and we asked Jimmy Page, and we asked Pete Townsend. Because we knew that they were, pretty much instrumental in producing their own records by The Who and records by Zeppelin and stuff like that. So we thought, we'll ask them. And the first guy that got back to us and really wanted to do it was Roger. And we knew Roger from touring with Deep Purple, so it was a great fit. And he knew what we were trying to do, and he just nailed it.
Now,
really put us on the map.
Going back to the second album, Exercises, what came out in 1972, you actually worked with Roy Thomas Baker.
That was before his Queen days.
Right, so he was pretty new then, huh?
And he was basically an engineer. Mm. And again, he didn't really know what we were doing. He engineered the first album. So we asked him to produce the second one because, he was a nice guy and we were getting on really good with him. Wow. Again, he didn't really understand what we were trying to do. Mm-hmm. And he couldn't point us in the direction. You couldn't sort of say, well, no, you have to get the drums and bass right first, stuff like that. You know? Really quite inexperienced when it comes to recording,
That actually feature Woke Up This Morning, right? And then you re-recorded it for the Razmanaz album?
That's right.
Yeah, with
That's
Roger.
right. Yeah, we sort of took it apart and made it more how we would play it live, you know what I mean?
Love that song. The lyrics are brilliant.
Yeah, it's a real sort of tongue-in-cheek blues song. Woke Up This Morning, every blues song starts like that,
Well, whatever you guys did on the Razmanaz record, you really just kind of brought it all together and poured the foundation for the future of the band.
Right.
And Manny, a question for you.
We nailed it.
When you were producing when Roger was producing Razmanaz, did you basically already have the foresight that you would want to produce the band one day? Like, was it a learning experience for you so that you could eventually do it on your own?
Yeah. I produced all the band's demos. I did all the demos. I had a sort of, a reel-to-reel tape recorder that you could bounce down, one track to the next and overdub and stuff like that. So I'd helped the band figure out all the demos. And that's basically the demos got us our deal,
Yeah.
And they were just rough and ready, but, we let Roger hear them and we let the management hear them and stuff like that. And so, I've got a good sort of solid background in electronics because I used to work for the Admiralty and telecommunications, so I had a good understanding about electronics so the big desk didn't intimidate me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it definitely seems like Razmanaz was the album that really came together for Nazareth, where you came into your own sound. Was Roger pretty instrumental in that sound? Obviously, you toured with him with Deep Purple, so he was very familiar with the band. But it really, at least here in America, we consider kind of the debut Nazareth album. The other two records were very hard to find, and this was kind of our introduction to Nazareth, and it really established the band as a very original.
Yeah. We also changed labels at that point. Warner's had the first two albums. Warner Brothers had the first two albums, and they really didn't know what to do with us.
Like Bob was saying, man, you couldn't even find those records in America, like in the middle of, like when I basically discovered Nazareth in 1978. And, as a new fan in 78, I couldn't find those records. They were non-existent to us.
Right.
Yeah. Razmanaz, Roger really helped us nail the sound and nail the performances. He had the song Bad Bad Boy, it's a straight sort of Elmore James blues like rip-off, And Roger had us do 40 takes on that to get the rhythm, to get the drums and bass. How he helped Darryl, our drummer, and Pete, the bass player, really work together.
Just the sonics on the record
helped a lot.
The mix is great too. The sonics on the record are perfect. Like that and Loud and Proud both have just such a great rawness to me. It just sounds like a real band in the room. Just the right amount of polish and rawness. It's perfect.
That's right. They were both great records, and they were both recorded with a mobile.
Wow, I didn't know.
Stones mobile up in Scotland in our rehearsal place where we used to rehearse. Roger, nailed it right away and said, just bring a mobile up to where you're comfortable playing and rehearsing and writing and all that stuff. And so he said, bring the mobile up there and we'll do all the recording in your rehearsal room, and then we'll take it down to London and we'll work in a really professional studio for the mix. AIR Studios with Jeff Emmerich mixing. Jeff Emmerich, he did all the Beatles stuff. They're a fantastic engineer, so the records sound great to this day.
Especially for 1973. I mean, very ahead of its time.
They're killer sound, really fresh and no click tracks and no computers, you know what I mean?
And that same year in 73, you put out Loud and Proud, which, a lot of people don't realize back in the 70s, most of the bands during that era, they would many times release 2 albums a year. Were those...
that was our record deal. Our record deal stipulated 2 albums a year.
I heard that.
And we delivered it, you know. And I think we did 3 albums at Rampant after that, So it was a tour and record. That was all we knew.
Yeah, Manny, I noticed that, obviously Nazareth always did a lot of covers on all the records. I'm looking at Loud and Proud right now. I have the page open on Wikipedia, going through it in sequence with you guys. And I noticed there are 3 covers on that record. So did you guys do the covers kind of as a way to relieve the pressure of having to do so many records a year, or is it just something you guys enjoy doing anyway?
So we're enjoying doing them anyway, because we did covers, right? We always did covers, and Razum Naz, there's covers on that as well, it's just Al-Trazili and Russell song, But it relieved the pressure. I always felt, that it was difficult for us because we were touring, and we didn't really have any time to sort of sit down and actually write new material, So it was always helpful if we picked out a couple of songs that we knew, you know what I mean? And then we'd arrange them. And Roger was a big help, helping us do arrangements on the songs, like This Flight Tonight, the Joni Mitchell song. I mean, I just thought it was a great song and we should try covering it. I thought it was a fantastic song, and we just pinned it down with a rhythm, and Roger helped us arrange it.
Right.
So it was a great team, We did Bob Dylan, Ballad of Hollis Brown, and it's like, serious metal.
That's serious doom metal. I mean, it's very slow and drudgy. I mean, very Sabbathy kind of.
Yeah, it seems like that song's gotten a lot of attention over the years. It seems to be like a sleeper track that people really, really grabbed onto later. And it is incredibly heavy, and
it's really heavy.
Yeah, you know what I noticed too on the track, Manny, is if when you listen to the track, and I think I read this in an interview with you somewhere. The sound of the track degrades as the phasing and all the different layers as the song progresses, the sound gets worse and more chaotic and more phasey. And I think you said in an interview that was something intentionally done to kind of portray the desperation of Hollis Brown as the moment was approaching, which I thought was just brilliant.
Dreadfully heavy song.
Yeah. It was just brilliantly done. One thing I can't emphasize enough, because we started talking about Nazareth cover songs, is I think you guys were one of the greatest bands ever as far as doing covers. You would take these songs, you'd completely transform them into your own song. I mean, you basically stole This Flight Tonight from Joni Mitchell and made it the definitive version. And then, like later on when I would go backwards and discover Little Feat through Teenage Nervous Breakdown, I would hear the Little Feat version, and it just, it wasn't the same. Like, you guys really made these songs your own. And in my opinion, because I work in the music business, I'm an A&R guy as well. I feel like if you're not going to cover a song and make it your own song, then there's no reason to do it. Nobody needs just a carbon copy of a song. You have to make it your own.
We didn't do karaoke version. You're cut for some reason.
But I think we're losing you, Manny.
Yeah, and I think we're just losing the connection now and again.
Yeah.
What was I saying? What were we talking about? Covers.
Yeah, This Flight Tonight.
Yeah, just like Joni, it's such a great song, and Roger helped us do the arrangement on it, and it was a big hit for us.
I was first familiar with the band when Love Hurts hit the radio, when obviously Hair of the Dog came out, and then I backtracked too, but I do recall This Flight Tonight getting quite a bit of airplay in the U.S. I don't know if the airplay was coming out in 73, but back in the mid to late 70s, you know, you heard Love Hurts, you heard Hair of the Dog, and you heard This Flight Tonight. And, you know, you would occasionally hear a Telegram at the time. But This Flight Tonight was a pretty big U.S. hit, from what I recall.
It was a radio hit then, because I remember Jerry Moss from A&M saying that he loved it and couldn't understand why it wasn't a bigger hit, you know?
I agree.
Yeah. Manny, did you ever get any feedback from Joni Mitchell about your cover?
Great story about Joni. We met her, and we were in LA, and we were in A&M's lot, and she was recording in A&M's studio at the time. I think it was Court and Spark she was working on at the time. And you know, the guy that did our A&R stuff said, do you want to go and meet Joni? And we said, oh, that'd be great. You know, so we went into the studio and shook her hand and said, we've done a version of This Flight Tonight. And the guy from A&M, he said, would you like to hear it, Joni? And she said, yeah, sure. So they played our version to her, and she sort of stood with her mouth open and went, that's really good.
That must have been a little nerve-wracking for you to play it, you know, sit there and play it for her, you know?
Yeah, it was nerve-wracking for her, too, I think, because she didn't know what we were or where we were. We were a bunch of Scots guys, you know. But anyway, what we heard later on, that she used to play it live and announce it as a Nazareth song.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, I mean, that's a case of you stealing the song. Like, yeah, you basically took the song from her and made it your track.
Yeah, we were lucky with that one. That was a big hit in Canada for us.
Yeah, you were always quite big in Canada, I remember.
Well, that's what did it. That song did it, because apparently, they had to play so much Canadian content on the radio. There was a stipulation on the radio in Canada that they had to play a certain amount of music with Canadian content, and with Joni being the writer,
Canadian, yeah,
it qualified, so they played it, and it was a hit.
Right. Yeah, it gave you a leg up in Canada. Did you ever get any feedback from Little Feat?
Not really, no. But we loved the band. You know, we met them. We actually met them. Went and seen them. I think it might have been before we cut. I'm not sure if we had covered the song or not. But anyway, we loved Little Feat. They were one of my favourite bands ever. When Lowell George was still alive, I thought they were phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I learned about a lot of these bands that you covered. Your covers were my introductions to these bands. So I was like 16 years old. I didn't even know what the hell Little Feat was until I saw the credit on Teenage Nervous Breakdown.
Right.
So it was very educational listening to your records, being able to go back and discover the bands and influence you guys.
Well, I'm a big music fan, always have been. I love listening to new music, and I'm always looking for a new song. Still to this day, I still, I'm a big fan of music, and I'm always looking for great songs to cover.
All right, should we move on to Rampant? 1974. Yeah, that probably was the album I was kind of least familiar with at the time. Didn't really have any songs that at least were on the U.S. radio. Of course, you did Shapes of Things. I remember the old Yardbirds song on that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit that was also Roger Glover that produced.
That record doesn't have the same sound.
Right.
That record doesn't have as good sonics.
I agree.
We used different engineer, and we recorded it in Switzerland because we couldn't record in the UK anymore because of crazy tax problems, the amount of tax we had to pay. So we said, our management said, you're going to have to record outside of the country, outside of the UK. And Roger said, well, we'll go to Switzerland, to Montreux, where Deep Purple recorded Smoke on the Water. And we went to this big convention centre, and we used the Rolling Stones mobile there, and then we brought it back to London to mix, and we went to another studio with a different engineer, and it just did not have the same sound.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's something a little bit missing sonically about the record in comparison to Razmanaz and Loud and Proud.
That's right. It's Jeff Emmerich.
Yeah. But man, it still sounds great. I mean, I still like the sound of the record. Like, it's hard to argue with a track like Silver Dollar Forger. It has this total, like, raw heaviness to it. So, I wouldn't...
Some good tunes on it. There's some good stuff on it. It just doesn't have that sort of clarity and definition.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Did you feel rushed at all, seeing that the previous year you put 2 albums out, and then, right following that year you had to put another album out?
It just didn't have time to think. You know what I mean? We were touring and recording and trying to write for the next album, you know, and it was just rush. And the writing started to suffer because we didn't have any. Our originals started to suffer a little bit. And at that point, I began to think that, you know, that Roger was not really seeing where we were trying to go. Because we did Razmanaz and we did Loud and Proud, and we didn't have a hit. We were desperately trying to make headway in America, you know.
Right.
Because you can only go so far in Europe, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, you know, I started to think, you know, we need to, you know, we've done 3 albums with Roger, and Roger's getting to the point where he doesn't really understand or like what we're trying to do. So I said, you know, next album we do, let's take a little bit more time and do some writing for it, and I'll produce it. And management said, all right then, go to the studio and produce a single for the band. And I said, well, we'll do a version of Love Hearts, and we cut that, and everybody was happy with it, and they said, okay, Manny, we'll let you do the whole.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So Love Hurts was kind of like a test for you to kind of basically convince management and the label that you could do it.
Kinda, you know.
Yeah.
It was kind of like an audition. First time lucky.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, then you turned around and self-produced arguably the band's greatest work. Not just the best songs, but also, in my opinion, the best sound and sonics of any Nazareth record is Hair of the Dog. It sounds fucking amazing.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
I mean, like, as great as Razmanaz and Loud and Proud sound, this record is really, like, by miles, like, just the best-sounding record all around to this day.
It had a, you know, a heaviness to it in the bottom end.
Now, was that something that you were trying to achieve? Because it seemed like on the last albums you were kind of struggling, and you said Roger wasn't really understanding the sound you were going for. Were you trying to go for this heavy? Because you listen to Hair of the Dog, it's night and day, so much heavier than Rampant and any of the previous albums. It's like it's a heavy metal masterpiece. I mean, it's my top 5 album of all time. Just every song on it is brilliant.
It still sounds great to this day.
Absolutely. Was it something?
It still sounds great, and it was done in the cheapest studio that we ever used. The most inexpensive studio that we ever used. We did Love Hearts, and we did the rest. We did all the recording for Hair of the Dog in that little pokey dump of a studio, you know. And then we went up to AIR, the main studio in London, and again I worked with Jeff Emmerich and recording like vocals up in AIR. And it was mixed by a guy called John Punter, who really knew what we were trying to do, and he really did a good job on the record.
He did an amazing job, and as you guys said before, the record has more low end and more sub, better, just rounder, thicker low end than anything before it, but also at the same time more separation and clarity. I mean, you could like stick your fingers into that mix. There's so much room and separation between those instruments. Yeah, it's incredible.
It still sounds really good. It's really good.
Yeah,
it's raw.
It's very raw,
There's not very much fancy processing going on in it. You know, it's just very, very live and very raw.
Yeah.
And it seems.
And by the way, you know, we were talking about Nazareth covers before. I have to say, "Beggar's Day" is my all-time favorite Nazareth cover. Maybe even my favorite Nazareth song. It's fucking amazing.
It's a great song. A great song.
On that song in particular, it's like the band really lets loose, especially. Of course, Dan McCafferty. I mean, the vocals on that is just you know sends goosebumps down.
At that point, Dan's voice was like unbelievably good.
Oh yeah,
unbelievably good. Just effortless.
Effortless. Being able to self-produce this album, did you feel you had the power to kind of go outside the box and the band just feel a freedom to just kind of let loose and do what they wanted in the studio?
Right. The thing was that we never thought of singles, you know. Everybody would say, you need a single. Well, you know, how do you do a single? What's a single? We're just trying to make good music. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, I working in the business, working with bands all the time, I find that the best singles tend to come by accident. Like when you tell a band to go in and write a single, that's when you don't get a single. We just let the band go in and do their own thing, and that's the singles come naturally. Absolutely, that's the way to do it.
You know, we had a big hit with Love Hearts. It was probably the worst thing that ever happened to us, because every time we spoke to the label, we need another Love Hearts. We need another Love Hearts.
Right.
For Christ's sake, it's a one-off song. You don't find another song like that.
Yep.
There isn't another song like that. You know, you can't just say, we need another Love Hurts.
And you know what? The less they would have bothered you for another Love Hurts, the more likely that they would have got one. It has to be a natural process. That's the only way it can work.
That's the only way it could ever happen with us. And we were pretty adamant about it. We didn't really pay much attention to the record company when they started to tell us what to try and play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We had a certain amount of independence because we had our own management company, and we were managed by a guy that believed in us, and he didn't interfere with the music.
Right. That was Bill. Was that Bill Fahely?
Bill Fahely. Right. Yeah.
I know you guys had a great relationship with him.
Well, it wasn't for him, we'd still be working in the dockyard. You know what I mean? We would never have made it. We would never went anywhere without him.
And that album, Hair of the Dog, was such a huge influence on the metal community. I mean, that album is always considered a classic. And, you know, it seems that Nazareth to me was just always so underrated. I mean, you hear, Zeppelin, Sabbath, Purple, and Aerosmith, and all AC/DC, all these classic hard rock and metal bands, but really Nazareth were right up there. And, just seeing that, Guns N' Roses covered, Hair of the Dog, Metallica covered, Please Don't Judas Me, right? And, so many bands look on that album as even prior to AC/DC as the band that really gave that gravelly vocal, raw, hard rock metal sound, and it really was a groundbreaking album.
And let's not forget Changing Times. That's possibly the heaviest Nazareth song ever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Miss Misery. I mean, so many great songs.
Oh my God.
That.
Yeah. It's perfect. It's a home run record.
Great songs. Just a bunch of great songs, and we nailed it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, it must have felt great for you, too, being the producer on it. Like, that the band made their best record when they produced it on their own. That must have been so rewarding for you, personally.
Well, it was, not just from a financial point of view, but from an artistic point of view. I mean, it made me very happy to be rewarded with that kind of success. Fans loved it,
And Manny, something about that production, it just still holds up today. I mean, so many albums that were produced back in the 70s, they sounded good for its time, but they just don't hold up. I mean, you can listen to that album today, and it still sounds full and thick and arena-like, and just a really amazing sound, and not just that album, but all the albums I think you produced with Nazareth.
I think Hair of the Dog was a standard that I couldn't sort of reproduce it because we were forced to again we were forced to work outside of the UK. I mean, Hair of the Dog was done in the UK with the studio and personnel and engineers, and the whole trip was done in Britain, and like I said, it was done in the cheapest studio. So there's not much, fancy processing going on there. It was pretty raw. And then we were forced to work overseas again when we'd recorded up in Morin Heights. Couldn't get the sound. Could not get that sound again.
Are you referring to Close Enough for Rock and Roll now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the sound of that record, but it's definitely, I view that record kind of like Rampant, like where it was like, it didn't quite follow up Hair of the Dog the same way Rampant didn't follow up Loud and Proud. Still a good record though, and a lot of strong songs, but not quite Hair of the Dog.
Was there a lot of pressure from the label?
No, we pretty much had our own. Our management said, the accountants say you've got to work overseas, and we'll work up in Morin Heights in Montreal because it's a really nice studio up there, and it ended up sounding polished. You know what I mean? Didn't have all the raw edges.
Well, I got to say, that album has one of my favorite songs on it, Telegram, which I think is an absolute epic. And I think it's so underrated because it's to me, it's like, it's like a Queen Bohemian Rhapsody or something with all the different parts. And you have that, as you mentioned, that guitar, that loop of that guitar riff that goes throughout the entire song. And then you have On the Way, and then So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star, and you just rock that version. And then Sound Check, which is totally unique, a guitar solo in the middle of a studio track, which I think only Zeppelin had done that before with Heartbreaker, and I think Queen with Brighton Rock.
Queen did it. Did it. That's where I got the idea from.
Well, I've always said I think you and Brian May were so influential, both, coming from Scotland, and just had such a uniqueness about you guys, both producer, guitar players, and very innovative. And you always came up with incredibly unique ideas. I mean, I really think that you are absolutely one of the most identifiable guitar players out there. I tell Monty, I remember when I saw your rehearsal when Jerry Best invited me out to the Valley a few years ago, and I go in the rehearsal, and it's like I'm stunned. It's like, wow, is this really Manny Charlton? Could it be? And then you plug in your guitar, and within 2 seconds, the riffs, and it's like, holy shit, this is Manny fucking Charlton. I'm not even a guitar player. As soon as you plug that guitar in, and you hear that, it's like hearing Richie Blackmore. Within 2 seconds, you know who it is. And it's like, that's Manny fucking Charlton.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Bob, I have to say that I do share your enthusiasm for Telegram. And, I guess that was always a great feeling when, I guess as a band member, you always want to have, like, a standout track on every record. Like, Telegram will always be the song that people know that record for. And, that's something you want to achieve on every record. You want to have at least one song on the record that legitimizes the record and is the calling card for it. So regardless of any of the issues with the sonics on the record, or it was clean, whatever, I mean, that's amazing that you got this complete ultimate Nazareth classic on that record.
And that actually got radio play, too.
It was a bit of a marathon recording it, because it was basically it was sequencing before there were sequencers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Basically, what I was doing was I was trying to set up, like, sequence parts, and it was all done to that initial chug guitar, the guitar that starts the song off and holds it all together. And it was like, we had that running in a loop around two stereo tape recorders, and that's what you do. That's basically what you do now when you work with loops. Right. You do it today. That's with Pro Tools and with sequencers, audio sequencers and stuff like that. So much easier now. The editing and the cutting and the pasting and all that. It was a marathon, and I was really proud of it.
It's so much easier to do today than it did in the past. Yeah. In the past, the band had to be tight and rehearsed, and you had to have creative engineers, and you were bouncing tracks around to make everything fit. It was just, it was much more like putting a puzzle together in the old days. Manny, was Telegram? I imagine some of these parts were, it sounds like the song was recorded in pieces and then assembled at the end.
That's right. It was all edit. There was like the four sections and 4 or 5 sections. Right. And we just started with a loop, with a guitar loop, with that chugging guitar, And
then it was all cut together with a razor blade at the end. The razor blade to 2-inch tape. That must have been terrifying.
That's right. That's right. It was all done with editing, and was a really good engineer I was working with. He knew exactly what to do.
And that song actually got quite a bit of FM radio play. I mean, considering it's an 8-minute song, I remember hearing that quite a bit. I remember hearing that around the same time they would play the Tubes' White Punks on Dope, and I just figured it was kind of familiar because that was kind of like a 7-8 minute song, and you would hear that back then when FM kind of came out. Something you had mentioned, which I always wondered, part 4 of the song goes into this very Beatles-ish kind of here we go again.
Yeah, I was like the audience,
Right.
We're at a show, we're playing to the audience, and then here we go again, singing the same old songs.
I love that. And that's actually you on lead vocals, right?
Yeah, actually, you can hear my voice in there, but we all sang it together.
Oh, okay.
All of us sang it kind of in unison,
Manny, was Vancouver's Shakedown based on a true story?
Yeah.
I imagine the band got ripped off in Vancouver or something?
That's right. That's right. The guy that promoted us didn't want to pay us, and he decided that he was going to hold all our gear, so we couldn't play the next day until we got it sorted out. We got a lawyer. We had to get a lawyer to, get him to release our equipment to the next show. Who's a freaking asshole?
Hey, but you know what? He did you a favor in the end, because at least you got a great song out of it.
Well, that's right. When I started writing the song when I was going back from that tour.
Well, yeah, that's the only way to make make what's the expression? Make lemons out of lemonade? Make lemonade out of lemons, or whatever that expression is.
Was to get something out of get something out of a bad situation,
Yes, absolutely.
Should we move on to Playing the Game, which also came out that same year in 1976?
Yeah, Playing the Game's an interesting record. I think, Manny, I think this record has your most covers of any record you've done, right? 4?
That's right. It was a case of the studio's booked, but we don't have any songs. Well, go into the studio and try and write some songs. So that's what we were doing. You know, we were trying to write songs in the middle of trying to record an album. You know, we didn't have any songs prepared for it. And it was bad news, really, because it set us back.
Yeah.
It's a bad habit.
It's just amazing to me how the industry was set up back then. Like, why wouldn't you want to give a band a few extra months or why wouldn't you want to let a band take some time off and just recharge the batteries? You know, you'd get a better record. I didn't understand this 2 records a year bullshit. It's awful.
Two words, management and cash flow.
Yeah, wow.
So the advance, that we were on a whacking great advance for these records at that point. After Hair of the Dog, we were getting like nearly $500,000 per album. So the management were rubbing their hands and saying, right, then you have to go into the studio again so we get our cash flow.
Yeah.
Because by that time it was a management company and they were working with other artists. And we were the cash flow to help them work with new artists. Fund them.
I guess, Manny, the only silver lining to that practice is that obviously when you guys are young men and you're in the zone, you know, like in the 70s, the band was kind of in an untouchable stage where you were young, the songs were pouring out, you guys were on fire, you were at your absolute peak. And the only silver lining in all this is that the label basically forced you guys to make a lot of music at a time when you were basically on fire and in the best position to make the best songs. So I guess that's the only good thing to come out of it is that you did make so much material in the 70s, whether forced or not. You know what I mean? That's the one good thing about it is that we have all these songs now.
We were under pressure too. You know what I mean? You're in the studio. You're under pressure. You've got to come out at the end of it and with an album.
Well, I think it's a fantastic album. I always loved that album and thought it was extremely underrated.
It's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it has a really great sound, you know.
I think it's one of the best produced Nazareth albums, along with Hair of the Dog. I mean, the opening to Somebody to Roll, when I first put that on, that opening riff, and then the drums come in and your riff, and then the slide guitar is just fucking magical.
That was Bob Seger's favorite.
Oh, yeah?
Somebody to Roll. He loved that.
Yes. And then Waiting for the Man.
It's a killer riff.
Absolutely.
It's a killer riff, and it's so easy. You know what I mean? It's not complicated, just the way it's delivered.
Like you were saying with Hair of the Dog, even, sometimes the simpler it is, the more effective it is. You know what I mean? Like, simplicity can be an amazing thing.
My philosophy as a guitarist. It's simple as good.
Absolutely.
Simple as good.
Bob, I don't want to rob you of your big moment, but I know you're going to ask Manny about Waiting for the Man, and so go ahead. I'll let you have it.
Well, we talked about this before, Manny. I think that song was a big influence on Queen's huge hit, which was their biggest hit at the time. Another one, Bites the Dust, and it just was astonishing that song, Waiting for the Man, never got any attention, at least here in the U.S.
I know. It was disco, you know what I mean?
Right.
It was our attempt at something, sliding about.
Let's see.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Wait, this record was 1976, and the Queen record, another one bites the... Oh, well, that was 1980.
Yeah.
Manny, did you guys ever tour with Queen for this record? Like, do we have any proof that John Deacon would have heard this song?
No, I mean, I've not got a problem. It's similar. The vibe is similar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you can't copyright a groove. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But, the point is, Nazareth was such a magical band because so many people look at Nazareth with, Dan McCafferty, one of the greatest vocalists in hard rock and metal, one of the most influential, whether you look at Brian Johnson or any of the great Axl Rose or any of the huge singers of today. It all, to me, comes down to Dan McCafferty. But Nazareth was such a unit. Everyone in the band, it was so important. And you especially, Manny, like I said, you were right up there to me with a Tony Iommi or Richie Blackmore or Brian May as far as the importance of the band. And I think a lot of, I really have to say that because I think so many bands, even Queen had that problem with, everyone thought it was Freddie Mercury, but everyone in the band contributed. Everyone had there was a chemistry about it.
Well, that's the thing. It's a great band. It's a great band, and it's greater than the sum of its parts, like the Beatles.
Absolutely.
A great band is bigger than the sum of its parts.
Well, you could say that about all the bands, like Sabbath, Zeppelin, Queen. All the greatest bands are the bands where all 4 guys or all 5 guys contribute this way. It's no accident.
Yeah, it's knowing your strengths. When you're in a band and you're all together, at that point in our career, we knew what our strengths were. Things changed as time went on. People didn't realize what their strengths were. Yeah, and they try to want to be. They want to be the songwriter. They want to be, in charge of artistic decisions. And by the time it got to 1980, we finished the album with Zal. Val came into the band. When we finished that, the whole chemistry was fucked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The chemistry in the band was fucked. And I decided I didn't want to produce it anymore because it was a responsibility. Okay, Manny, you've done 3 albums. We haven't had any hit singles. I said, okay then, well, let's get somebody else in.
Right.
Because at that point, I felt that I was just, trying to write songs, trying to produce a band, trying to play guitar, and it just got, old.
And we'll get into that Malice in Wonderland when you mentioned that Skunk Baxter.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to talk about that one.
Yeah, but let's move on to before we get ahead of ourselves here to what was it, 77? Expect No Mercy, one of my favorites.
Expect No Hershey's.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to say, guys, I view Expect No Mercy as like one of the later 70s highlights for me. To me, it's my favorite Nazareth record after not my favorite, but let's just say to me it's a return to form after Hair of the Dog. It may not be the heaviest Nazareth record, but there's something about that record I just love. It's definitely one of my top 4 Nazareth records. I love the 70s disco influence in it. The 4 on the floor, disco drums, just everything about the record I think is fantastic.
I was real happy. We did 2 versions of that album, by the way.
Yeah,
yes.
Manny, I did. Until Salvo did the reissue a few years back, I didn't even know that initial version. I didn't even know it existed. This was the days before the internet, right? I had no idea that there was an original version of the record. But then it made sense because I saw songs like Greens and Desolation Road were on that record, and of course I knew them because they came out as a single back in the day. I already knew those songs, but I didn't know that they were part of an entire record that had been scrapped.
Yeah, they were B-sides.
Yeah, that must have been, was that a very tense situation for you when the label came in and basically said that they wanted you to redo the record?
Well, yeah, that's right. They said, we don't hear a single.
Right. So it must have been a very tense situation.
Well, they didn't tell us. They didn't tell me. They told management. They told our management, we don't hear a single.
But,
very, very sort of reticent to release it.
Right, but if they didn't hear a single, though, why? I would assume that they would have told you, okay, go in and, write a few more songs. But they made you redo the whole record.
You wanted the whole thing redone.
Did they want it cleaner?
They complained about the mix as well. They didn't hear, like they say, they didn't hear a single. So go back in and try and come up with a single. We'll remix it and we'll write another couple of songs for it. And that's what we did. And then we gave them the second one, and they released the second.
Well, I got to say, the redone one is the one I grew up with, and to me, it's the better record. There's lots to love about the original, but the redone one seems to have been the right move. It's a better record for me.
Maybe so. I still think it's debatable.
I'm sorry, which one do you think is the best?
I like the original because it was fuller.
Right. It definitely was fuller. Manny, I hear you. Like a song like Kentucky Fried Blues on the original has a thickness to it. The redone version lost the thickness and beef, but to me it's a good trade-off because I love the performances and the spirit and the energy of the redone one, even if maybe some of the sonics got sacrificed.
Yeah, I agree. It's probably a stronger record from the material point of view. Yeah. And, we got Expect No Mercy wasn't written for the first album. We wrote that in the second one.
But even the version of Gone Dead Train is just so much better. The redone version has just so much more energy to it.
It's different. I like the sort of the earlier version of Gone Dead Train where it's kind of.
And that was kind of a radio hit, wasn't it? It got some radio.
Has more of a sort of country feel.
Yeah. And there are 3. I count 3 disco-ish influence songs: Expect No Mercy, Revenge Is Sweet, and Give Me What's Mine. And was that accidental, or was that something, or were you just like influenced by the sound in '77?
I don't think of them as disco. I don't really. They weren't approached from that perspective.
Right,
just
right.
the perspective.
Yeah, I guess I'm just
That's
referring to the drums,
kind of a
right?
shuffle
It's the
beat.
four on the floor,
It's a-
driving, dancey kind of drums. That's
I hear what you're talking about.
I wouldn't say disco, just more of a danceable drum beat, very catchy, kind of shuffleish beat.
Yeah.
Love that song, and you mentioned Kentucky Fried Blues, which I think is one of the all-time greatest riffs. The guitar tone you have on that, it sounds like a clucking chicken. I mean, it just sounds like Kentucky Fried Blues, and the lyrics are great.
Yeah.
You have just truck driver, the story of a truck driver.
I love that song. I love that song as well. It's one of these simple riffs again. But I discovered, I think the studio had got one of the first Eventide harmonizers, and I used it on some of the guitar parts on it, and it's just magic.
And I think one of Dan McCafferty's best vocal performances. He just sounds like just a maniac, just unbelievable. The depth.
Well, he sounds like the trucker in the song. This just like guy at the end of his, just desperate. Also, guys, we haven't talked about artwork either, but
I was just
to me, the best,
the
artwork on Expect No Mercy is a top 3 for me. It's that and No Mean City and Hair of the Dog is the 3 best pieces of art the band has had.
Yeah, well, Frazetta, we had to get permission to use the Frazetta sleeve for Expect No Mercy. But it's classic.
Right. Oh my God, was it expensive? Do you recall?
I can't remember. It would be management that paid it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
they would deal with that. And we certainly started things rolling with that sleeve, because all the bands, all the rock bands, all started using sleeves like that.
Molly Hatchet used Frazetta later as well.
That's right.
So, Manny, how did you interpret the cover art? Like, I mean, which warrior's winning that battle? Is it the guy below or the guy on top?
Who knows?
That's the brilliance of it, right?
Yeah, because it would be impossible, because the guy below has got horns, doesn't he? The guy below's got horns, so it would be impossible for the guy to actually, kill him because of the horns.
Right.
Get in the way.
Yeah,
pretty amazing. A silly detail, but no, I love the sleeve.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that would influence a lot of these death metal bands, Slayer and all these bands. Like Nazareth was doing that, long before having that album cover artwork. And I know you worked with Hypnosis on Close Enough for Rock and Roll and others, but I definitely agree. I think this and No Mean City, and I still to this day, I think No Mean City inspired Derek Riggs, who did them at the Iron Maiden album covers. It's so metal. It was like you look at that album.
The artwork for No Mean City is fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, amazing.
The kids would be walking about with their denim jackets on with that painted on the back.
Yeah, I had a friend that had it. And by the way, No Mean City, to me, like, Expect No Mercy and No Mean City are just 2 peas in a pod, like, just 2 amazing pieces of work, like, at the end of the 70s for you guys. 2 of my favorite Nazareth records. I would cite No Mean City, Expect No Mercy, Hair of the Dog, and Razmanaz. Yeah. Those are the 4 best. Razmanaz, Hair of the Dog, No Mean City, Expect No Mercy for me.
Well, let's get to that, because that was 79, so there was a 2-year break between that and, of course, Expect No Mercy. And, of course, you had Zal Clemenson, who was from the sensational Alex Harvey band, which was a fantastic Scottish band, a very, very, very underrated.
We were friends with them. They were with the same management as us. The Alex Harvey band and Nazareth were managed by the same guy, Bill Feely. I love the Alex Harvey band, and I love Zal Clemenson as a guitar player.
Yeah, well,
he's probably the most underrated guitar player on the planet.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I love his playing.
He's a phenomenal guitar player.
When you asked Zal into the band, was it because you felt like the band needed a creative change, or was part of it that you just felt sorry for him because he's this amazing guy and he's out of work? Was it a little bit of both?
Yeah, both reasons. Right. He was driving taxis.
Yeah,
and I thought, well, that's a shame,
Oh, what a shame.
And I was at the point where I wanted somebody else in the band, take a bit of the load off. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah. But you mentioned before, you mentioned a change in chemistry, though. Did that change in chemistry with Zal being in the band, was that something you found helpful? Or in the end, was it not the right move? Like, how do you feel looking back now?
Well, it didn't happen on No Mean City. The chemistry was still there on No Mean City. Even with Zal Clemenson in the band, the chemistry was intact because I was still producing. I was still producing the band, right? But when Skunk Baxter, took over production, he drove a wedge in the band, and we never recovered.
Right,
I'm talking personality-wise. I'm talking between the person. Like I say, knowing what you're good at, he drove the wedge in the band that split the chemistry off. and convinced members of the band to start writing that shouldn't have been writing. Because it was, the Nazareth is a guitar band, and the bass player and the drummer can't write songs because it's guitar driven.
I agree.
You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with it? Because what happened was that, I ended up fighting tooth and nail by it because he did one important thing. He never saw us play live. When I had a big worry about that because he didn't know what the fuck we were. And he made his own record.
Yeah.
We were like session guys on our own record.
Yeah, some of these producers, they come in and they want to make their mark, and they don't realize that they're in the lives of the band for a month, and then they're gone, but then the band has to deal with the consequences and the remains of what gets done.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not about the producer. The producer needs to serve the means, to serve the needs of the band.
And my philosophy is the producer is there to get the best performance out of the artist. Nothing more, nothing less.
Yep.
I was going to say, was it the case that on No Means City, again, this was like the fourth album you produced with Nazareth, there wasn't a radio hit, and which is shameful because I think this album was absolutely brilliant. So was it basically the record company just saying, hey, you need a new direction, let's get Skunk in?
Well, that was me as well.
Because the whole direction really changed.
Because at that point, I was getting pressure because we weren't having hits. I was getting pressure from the guys in the band. I mean, we were a democracy, right? So-called democracy. I was feeling pressure from that perspective that, I was producing the records and we weren't having hits. That didn't seem to matter what I was doing with the band. We were making all these great records. They were all going gold, by the way. They were all going gold, but there was no hit singles. They were all selling gold.
Right.
But that wasn't enough.
Was May the Sunshine, was that a big hit? Or, because it was kind of mediocre, I think, here in the States. Was it a worldwide? Was it a worldwide hit or no? May the Sunshine?
What song?
May the Sunshine off of No Means City.
It was a hit in the UK.
Okay.
But that's about it.
Something interesting, getting back to artwork, is I didn't realize this until just recently. When I was looking at the cover, that guy, to me it was just some cool, scary-looking dude holding razor blades, but I didn't realize until maybe I learned this within the last 12 months that the cover is referencing these razor gangs in Scotland.
Oh, wow.
Can you tell us anything about that?
It was a book. I read it in the 50s, and it was a story about the razor gangs in pre-war Glasgow.
Right.
And these gangs would run around, and it's a bit like Peaky Blinders. The Peaky Blinders.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet, but I want to see it. Yeah.
You haven't seen it?
I haven't yet, but everybody tells me I have to see it.
Oh, it's brilliant. You'll love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
It's a great series. Anyway, that was set in Birmingham, and what the guys wore these caps, and along the edge of the brim of the cap, they would put razor blades. And when they would get into a fight with somebody, they would just take the cap off their head and smash them across the face with all these razors.
Jesus.
Wow.
That were protruding. And in Glasgow, it was open razors.
Wow.
That was the weapon. No guns.
Well, I got to say, Rodney Matthews captured it perfectly. I mean, the imagery, the colors, everything about it.
We told them the backstory of it. We told them what the song's based on the book.
Brilliant artwork.
Guys, have you both seen the Rodney Matthews new version of the art?
No. Of this album cover?
This, Bob?
No.
Yeah, basically the modern version of the band released I guess it was a live show not too far ago, and he redid the No Mean City cover, new colors, kind of a reimagined version. You haven't seen it?
No. Have you seen it, Manny?
No.
You haven't seen it either, Manny?
No.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'll send it to you when we end this phone call. You should take a look at it. It's not as good as the original, but it's pretty interesting. Cool. Anyway, Bob, do you want to get back into Malice?
Was there anything you wanted to say about No Mean City, about any of the tracks in particular? Monty, I know that was one of your favorites.
I love it all. Claim to Fame's probably my favorite track.
Claim to Fame,
it's heavy and simple and driving.
Simple Solution.
There's not a bad song on the record. I think it's a 10 for me.
Yeah. Zal actually got some writing credit on this album coming into the band. I know Simple Solution, and I think he co-wrote some of the others.
He made a lot of really great contributions to it. He came into the band full of enthusiasm, and then it was great having somebody else to bounce ideas off.
And No Mean City, another epic song. I mean, just the big fullness of that song and the way it builds up.
Yeah, it's a kind of mini opera, you know.
Yeah.
The whole record to me just feels fresh. Like the band sounds reinvigorated. It's not like it's not a huge change in direction, but it just feels like a kind of a rejigged, fresher version of the band, you know?
Yeah, it just feels fresher.
Yeah.
It just feels fresher because of, Zal's input and his energy and his guitar playing. It was a happy record. We had a great time making it, and it came out, and we were over the moon with it.
Yeah, you can hear it in the record. You can hear it's just a band loving what they're doing.
So I guess Malice in Wonderland. We were briefly talking about that, and I know you had a lot to say about this, Manny, with Jeff Baxter coming in. And again, this is when I think we've discussed this through our chats before. This is when I kind of got turned off by Nazareth, and to me, I was always a hard rock metal head, and coming back to hearing some of the songs, I do agree with Monty that there's some really great songwriting on this album. But for me, right. I thought the heaviness was just...
That's what was so frustrating for me, because there's some great songs and some great performances. It's just a hellish mix.
Yeah, it would be interesting, Manny, to hear you go back and remix that record. But was it tracked heavier? Like, in other words, if you had the multi-tracks in front of you now to do your own mix, could you make it sound heavier, or is the cleanness just in the recording itself? No,
the cleanness is in the mix.
Okay, so you could. So there were more balls in the recording itself than what we're hearing in the mix.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
Wow. God, I'd love to hear that.
The thing that frustrated me a lot was the fact that it was done on 48 tracks,
right,
for a 4-piece band. I never used 48 tracks. I always used 16 tracks or 24 tracks, but 48 is just over the top. So
yeah, you don't need
doubled.
Yeah.
No, everything's doubled. There's a DI of every guitar in it, and then there's the amp guitar. And Jeff Baxter, when we were mixing it, he would mix the DI guitar. You know what a DI guitar sounds like? It sounds hellish. You would never dream of using a DI guitar.
So he put the DI guitars in the mix?
Yeah, he mixed every guitar. Every guitar was mixed amp and the DI. He used the DI and the amp, and he said that he wanted the DI for clarity. I'm sorry, the amp sounded big on its own. Didn't need a DI. He had every idea that Jeff Baxter could think of to play from a guitar perspective. He had either Zal do it or me do it. And I was extremely worried by this. Where are we going with all these double guitars? We'll never be able to play this live. Never in a million years will we be able to play these songs live.
And didn't you tell me that one of your guitar solos, one of your favorite guitar solos, he replaced with like a saxophone solo or something?
That was Zal Clemenson's song, Big Boy.
Big Boy. Okay.
That's Zal's song. Zal wrote that song. And what happened was that my father had decided to move from Scotland to Gibraltar to Spain, and I wanted to see him before I left. So in between the recording and the mix, I went back to Scotland. Then I came back out to LA to see what was going on with the mix. First thing, I wasn't allowed in the friggin' studio.
What?
He didn't want me in the studio. He didn't want me in the studio when he was mixing it. Then I heard Zal had played like umpteen guitar solos for Big Boy. And Zal does not play a bad guitar solo, ever. He's a phenomenal guitar player. Jeff Baxter said, I'm not here now. I think we should get a sax player. A triple scale buddy of mine, sax player, and he can play the solo on it. I went, you fucking what?
Manny, when you first heard Baxter's mixes, did you lose your mind?
Oh, I was fucking livid.
Wow.
I was livid. But the rest of the guys loved it. Yeah. The record company loved it. LA, all the record company guys go, oh, yeah, sounded very Steely Dan.
Yeah, it's like, this isn't Nazareth, this is Steely Dan.
It's a solo record, and we just happened to be playing on it.
Right. Did the label feel like, in other words, because of course the whole goal in bringing in Baxter was to get the elusive hit. I know that Holiday was kind of a hit here in America. Did the label look at that as like the radio song that they wanted?
That's what they wanted. That's what they wanted, and I hated it.
I got to say, when that record came out in 1980, I was 16 years old. I didn't really understand the record or like it, but like I was saying in that Facebook post, if you can go back now as a mature adult that doesn't need to necessarily only hear heavy stuff and you're okay with yacht rock and silky smooth sounds like you are at our age, And if you can look at it as just something different, not necessarily a Nazareth record, if you could take it on its own terms, it's a pretty enjoyable record for what it is on its own terms.
Absolutely. Look, I've not got a problem with the material on it, the songs or the performances. I don't have a problem with that. It's a great record, but it's not a Nazareth record.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
What the problem was, it turned off our fan base. We had a great fan base. Like I said, we were selling gold. We were selling gold on every album. And the people that bought No Mean City went out and bought friggin' Malice in Wonderland. What the fuck is this?
Yeah. Did that album go platinum?
What album?
Malice in Wonderland.
No.
So it wasn't that much of a... That's why I don't understand. And I guess you kind of answered my question, why they brought Jeff Baxter back for the follow-up album, the Full Circle, I guess, because the label liked him so much. And
the label. I spoke to Jerry Moss about that, the head of A&M. I said, I don't want Jeff Baxter to produce another record.
Right.
Oh, Manny, you've got to rethink. You've got to sort of grow up. You've got to get a kind of older head on your shoulders and that. And I was outvoted by the rest of the guys in the band. And when I went to do Full Circle, I said, I am doing nothing to help Jeff Baxter on this record. And I worked against them.
Yeah. I mean, it does, to me, the Full Circle sounds a lot like Malice. It's a smooth, kind of light, and it's like kind of like the cousin to Malice, but I don't think the songs are as strong.
It's not Nazareth. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's no performance there. There's no Zal Clements in there either. There's no performance. It's all, direct.
Yeah, I don't understand, because those albums weren't that huge hits where it would convince the label. You're saying you're losing your core audience. It's not like it's, like when AC/DC
That's exactly
put
my
Black and
point.
Black
the
out,
point
and
is that we lost our hardcore fans, all of them.
Absolutely.
Well, you didn't lose Bob and I.
Well, I actually did. I got to say, at Malice in Wonderland, I did lose interest from there on. You would still be into Nazareth, and I've seen the band, a couple times after, but it wasn't, to me, it never was the same.
Yeah. No, I stayed with the band through Sound Elixir.
The added keyboard, don't even go there. Don't even mention these 80s records.
Anyway, Manny, forgetting the 80s, so we're just curious, what would your top 5 in order rank be? Best to worst, your favorite Nazareth records?
I could give you the 5 that I would choose. I can give you Razum and Az, Loud and Proud, Hair of the Dog, Expect No Mercy, and No Mean City.
Yep, that's it.
In no particular order, I love them all. They're all great Nazareth records.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you. Those are the 5. I think it would be very hard to put those into a rank other than saying Hair of the Dog's number 1. That's it. That's as far as I go, to put that number 1, and then the other 4 I can't choose in order.
If you ask me what my favorite record of them all is, it would be Hair of the Dog.
Yeah,
but I think that's the most consistent.
Right. And is there one record you would cite as the most underrated of that period?
Of that period?
Yeah.
I've got a soft spot for Playing the Game. I really don't like any of the 80s records.
Right.
No, Cinema almost made it.
I don't even. I stopped following the band after Sound Elixir. I don't really know if I've heard Cinema.
Wonder. And that was me back. Trying to produce them on that record, Sound Elixir.
Right. Oh.
But the songs I tried to produce it. But I didn't write. I don't think I wrote any of the songs.
Right.
I think they were all either the bass player or the other Billy Rankin songs. I just didn't feel that that I was producing it. You know what I mean? I felt that I was trying to produce another band, because at that point that's what it was. It was another band.
I mean, I guess
we added a keyboard player to it, 2XX. So, what the hell is this? This is not Nazareth.
I find that once the chemistry and it changes in a band, it's usually pretty hard to recapture it. Some bands can kind of get it back, but once the lightning's gone, it's usually gone.
That's right. Well, that was definitely the case with Nazareth. I mean, the whole thing just fell apart.
Yeah.
Creatively, personality-wise, personally, everything just fell apart.
Well, you know what? Something I like to repeat to bands sometimes, and I didn't make this up, but I read it somewhere. There's this philosophy that all bands are born with an amount. There's an amount of rocket fuel that exists in a band, and it's a finite amount. Once the rocket fuel's gone, it's gone. And when it runs out, it's almost next to impossible for a band to get that back. It's gone.
Yeah.
You know, and
right. Well, that's what I was saying about a great band. It's bigger than the sum of its parts. So I mean, if somebody dies, like Keith Moon dies or John Bonham dies, the best thing to do is to fold the band up. Don't freaking try and go back.
Well, that was the thing about Nazareth, too, was the four guys for the 70s. I mean, Nazareth, to me, was that decade of the 70s with the four of you. And then, you know, you added Azelle, which were the five, but it was still the four original members. And that was the magic of Nazareth. And like you say, with so many bands of that era, you know, you could say Sabbath, Zeppelin.
The chemistry, and people knowing what their role in the band was.
Yeah.
And being happy with that. It's kind of like the Stones, the Rolling Stones, you know, it's kind of like them. It's Keith and Mick, and the rest of them just toe the line. You know, they didn't just fire people for the sake of it.
So, Manny, why don't we get up to date? A couple things I want to bring up, which a lot of people don't know. I know, what was it, like last year, I believe, you know, Guns N' Roses reissued that big Appetite for Destruction, like a box set. And you actually have some of your demos, because you were originally asked to produce that album in '86, and you actually did demos of like 4 tracks, and they actually ended up reissuing that just last year on a bonus disc, right? You want to talk a little bit about that?
I'd actually did the whole set at that point when I was working with them. I recorded the whole set. I said, because, you know, what happened with Guns N' Roses, somebody through our management approached me and said that this band Guns N' Roses from LA want you to produce them. Are you interested? I said, who? Because at that point I'd never heard of them. And they sent me some cassettes, and it was basically Axl said, who was the label at that point?
Geffen Records?
Geffen, that's right.
Yeah.
They said to the Tom Detour, the A&R guy, and said that get us the guy that did Hair of the Dog. And that was it. That was his orders. So he contacted me and he said, would like you to come out and meet the guys and see you. So I said, well, that's fine. I said, but I'm in the middle of doing a Nazareth record. Right now, I'm in the middle of it. I said, I'll come to LA and I'll see what they're doing, because they gave me these cassettes. You know, I couldn't hear the songs, I couldn't hear the vocals properly, and they were just horrendous. And I said, I have to come and see what the band is about and see if I want to work with them. Because, like I say, they were nobody then.
Sure.
Nobody knew who they were.
Yeah.
You know, and so I went out to LA and I said, listen, let's just do this real quick and easy. Let's just go into Sound City Studio and we'll set you up like you're playing a club gig. We won't use any multi-tracks. We'll put Axl in the 2 doors between the studio where he's reasonably soundproof, and the rest of you guys just set up like you're in a club and just play live. So we did that, and we recorded it and mixed it as we went and recorded it all to stereo. I said, just do your whole set so I can get a handle on what you're doing as a band. When I finished it, I said, you guys are great. You're really great. I'd really love to do the album with you, but got to go back to Scotland and finish the Nazareth record. I said, if we can get our schedules together, let me know. And that was the last I heard of it.
Yeah. I've read about this story. You know, I've read interviews with you talking about this. I have a question for you, Manny. I understand what you did with the band. You took them into the studio. You wanted to just basically get the band's sound on tape so that it could be documented as a step one, so you could go from there to hear what was there. Do you feel that people were expecting more? Like, in other words, do you think you lost the gig because of that? Because they were expecting you to produce it?
Maybe they thought I was going to produce it right there and then, but I said, I don't want to produce it because I don't know what's going on with the songs.
Oh, yeah.
I need you to just play them. So
yeah, I totally understand what your approach was. I'm just wondering if they were expecting something different, you know? Who knows?
No, I just think they were auditioning people, and I was one of them.
Right. Well, it's nice that stuff came out, right?
later on, that I heard that they had auditioned like 9 or 10 people. The thing is, the final record just sounded like what I did with them, but a little bit more multi-tracked. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yep. Manny, did you get the version that came out?
I'm really not interested in them anymore. You know what I mean? Right. It's like history to me.
Yeah.
They could get the original lineup together. You're not going to recreate the magic. Like I said, the band has a certain amount of rocket fuel. When the rocket fuel's spent, it's not coming back. It's just the way it is.
It would come back. If it would come back to Fleetwood Mac, if they just rehired Lindsay.
Are you saying that if that lineup of Fleetwood Mac with Lindsay got back into the studio, the five guys came together, you think they could make another Rumors in 2019?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But that would be as far as a live band going out and pleasing the fans and playing the hits, it would be damn near as perfect as you could imagine it. It would be as good as the Eagles, put it that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I definitely would agree with that.
Well, it's all about branding. Who owns the name,
Without Lindsay's voice and without Lindsay's guitar playing, there's no the Fleetwood Mac that we know and love.
We're seeing more and more of these classic bands going out with one original member, or, in the case of some bands, no original members, and it's just a money grab, I think, for a lot of these bands.
It's like Nazareth. Nazareth are still touring.
Yeah.
With one original member, the bass player.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you talk to Dan McCafferty? Have you spoken to him over recent years? How he's doing?
We don't really, we don't communicate.
I'm just wondering how he's doing. I haven't heard anything.
I wonder how he's doing as well. I actually posted today. I put this thing up. This is your memory from one of your memories from 5 years ago. And it was pictures of Dan, and I just shared it again, and it's going through the roof. I mean, people love Dan McCafferty.
Oh,
and one of the fans said. One of the fans said to me, he said, "Are you in touch with Dan, and how is he doing?" And I said, "Unfortunately, I'm not in touch with him, but the last I heard, he had done a new solo album."
Can you, finally clarify the rumor? Nobody seems to know. Was Dan asked to audition or join AC/DC? Is that a rumor, or is that true?
I never heard of it at the time.
Right.
At the time, I never heard of it. And then it became part of the folklore, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, we'll leave it at that.
He would never have left. He would never have left Nazareth.
Right. Yeah, it was his baby. That was your baby. One thing I will say is, again, I haven't really followed Nazareth since the early 80s, but I did hear a record they put out. I guess it was Dan's last record, Rock and Roll Telephone.
Right.
And I gotta say, man, he's still got the pipes, even on that record. For a guy his age, he still sounds pretty fucking great on that record.
He's okay if he's in the studio and you give him 3 minutes or 4 minutes.
Right.
Or stage, he's good for maybe 2-3 songs tops.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, look, he did the noble thing. He didn't want to go up there and half-ass it. He knew if he couldn't deliver, then he should bow out gracefully, which he did.
So talk about, before we close off, Manny, about what you got going on, because you had a great band. When I saw you guys rehearse a few years ago with my buddy Jerry Best, you had a young singer with you. You've recorded quite a few solo records over the years. What's going on with you these days?
Not very much. I've got a band here in Spain. We did some dates in Germany, and they weren't very well promoted, and it was a bit of a disaster, really. So we're playing live. I'm not that motivated, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
Apart from that, I do my own solo things for...
Bob had sent me a YouTube version of you playing Changing Times live. Maybe this was a couple years back. And it sounded pretty ferocious. I mean, you certainly seem like when you're on stage, you love it to sound just as hard and heavy as you did when you were 20 years old.
Well, that's it. I don't think any of the energy or...
Yeah, you can see it in that clip. I mean, you're
Absolutely.
You sound great on that song, on that clip.
It's the way I play, you know what I mean? I can't change it. It comes from that place, and I don't want to change that either.
That's the Manny Charlton sound. Was there anything else you guys wanted to add before we end this?
You want to talk about new artists that I like?
Yeah.
Sure. Who do you like, Manny? Give us some.
I like Gary Clark Jr.
Right.
I love him.
Heard about him.
I think he's a great young guitar player. And I like a band called Rival Sons.
Great band.
Oh, I love Rival Sons.
Great hard rock band.
Yeah, and Manny, you must like the production on their records too. They have a lot of rawness in their sound, which I love.
Absolutely, obviously great.
Yeah.
But so's the Gary Clark stuff. The Gary Clark stuff, the production's great on it. Phenomenal guitar sound. It's huge guitar sound he gets.
Yeah.
And I like the Brothers Osborne. Kind of country music, Leonard Skinner on steroids.
I'll have to check that out.
They have a young...
Yeah, I gotta say, I've heard of them, but I don't really know their stuff. I gotta check it out.
Man. Check them out. They freaking rock.
Wow.
The guitar player is phenomenal. And great song. A lady called Rhiannon Giddens. Have you heard of her?
I've heard her name, yes.
She's freaking great as well. Great song, great voice. A couple of girls called Larkin Poe.
Who?
Heard them? Larkin Poe. There's 2 girls. Young girls. 19, 20-year-old.
Oh, wow.
Look great.
Yeah.
And they can play the shit out of blues. They're freaking great. Check them out.
All right, we definitely will.
Yeah, so there's still great songs. There's lots of really great music still out there.
Well, it was a pleasure, Manny.
Absolutely, man. Well, let's do it again sometime.
You know, to be able to relive this amazing music with the man who was responsible for making it, it's kind of a dream come true. You know, it makes me feel like a kid again and reminds me of why I got into music to begin with. You know, I mean,
that's great, and I appreciate all the compliments and all the good things you've been saying about me. Thanks a bunch.
Well, thank you.
For being fans. Thanks for being fans.
Okay, guys.
All right, fantastic.
Hey, have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast. Subscribe and listen to all episodes by going to our pages on iTunes, Spreaker, YouTube, Spotify, and more. You can listen to all other episodes and access up-to-date information and news on the Shockwave Skull Sessions podcast by going to our website at www.shockwaveskullsessions.com. Email all comments, questions, and suggestions to shockwaveskullsessions@gmail.com.